How are you feeling? You got John Riggs here talking about the movie Not for Resale, and it's available right now. You can check out links in the description below how you can see yours, and I have seen it. And in this video, I want to talk about it. Now, quick history about me before I talk about the film, especially if you're new to the channel. My name is John Riggs. I am the sixth of 7 children growing up. I was born in the 70s. I'll at least tell you that much. Born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, kind of lived in the 90s, and now here we are today. So I saw kind of the evolution of early on stuff and then to where we are today. Had an Atari 2600. I remember when my dad first bought one, and that was my first passion of mine. Now, growing up, as many children will maybe not admit to, but a lot of the things that you really love, you just kind of adapt from your older brothers and sisters. This is like, oh, they like, like my brother liked the Raiders. Well, I guess I like the Raiders because he likes the Raiders, so I'm going to like the late Raiders now. My other brother was really into breakdancing in the 80s because it was the 80s. So now I'm really into breakdancing. I saw Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo in the movie theater a minimum of 4 times because the movie theater was like 2 blocks away from my house. So, I mean, may as well, right? So that's that. So, but video games, when video games came about, that was, although my brothers and sisters also played video games, that was the thing that was really mine. And I loved the Atari 2600, and I found a passion in the NES. And then, and again, here we are today. And we're talking about Not for Resale. It's a documentary right now. I do need to say that I watched it courtesy of the director provided me a digital copy of the film, which I know is slightly ironic that I got a digital copy of a movie about video game stores and the preservation of keeping the artifacts alive. But that aside, when I meet them at a convention and they're selling the Blu-ray, they're selling the DVD, I'll buy the Blu-ray for my collection. How about that? But I watched it in advance for the purpose of this video. And but I don't know the director personally. I saw him briefly at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo a couple of years ago. They said, "Oh, he's doing a movie or doing a documentary." I was like, "Oh, cool." But I wasn't gonna bug him or anything like that. So I left him. I let him be. A couple of my buddies are in it, and I took some brief notes. So we'll see if I can. I'll see what I can cover in this without spoiling anything because I think it's worth your while to watch, especially if you love video games and if you especially are interested in like where games came from to where they're going, to where they might be 5 years, 10 years, next year. Hard to say. I mean, it's going from something like this. I'm a personal favorite of mine right here, to something like this, which has the entire like NES and Game Boy library on this little card. That's the reality of it all. And as much as I love this, and I don't consider myself a collector, I happen to have a collection. I love the collection I do have, but even I have EverDrives. Even I can play things on an emulator for the sake of convenience, and that's kind of the core of what this movie's all about. Where it talks about pros and cons. It's like, well, digital's popular because it's convenient, and I was part of that convenience factor too. When the Wii came out, that's right when I had children. When the PlayStation 3 came out, which was a week like after the Wii came out, or a week or before or after, one of the two, I had both. It wasn't as easy for me to just go down to the store all the time because I was at home when I wasn't at work with taking care of my child. So when it came to buying games and stuff like that, it was just so much easier. I could just click download and call it good. And because of that, what about the games that are there? What about where are they going now? What about these physical games that are, are they going to be here next week? We don't know. At the time, I was just like, I was doing it for convenience. Read into some issues later with mine where, if I couldn't connect online, it didn't know that I had the game license or something like that, and I couldn't play them. There was an instance, which I don't know is documented anywhere, but a personal instance of mine was I loved the game Rock Band 3. And I had it for the Wii. We had 2 microphones, so my wife and I would actually do the karaoke mode. We didn't care about the drums and the bass and the guitar and all that. And again, this is a personal story going off topic of the movie. I had Rock Band 3 for the Wii. I probably sunk easily $300, $400 into song downloads alone. But then when the Wii U came out, and they're like, hey, you want to transfer all of your stuff over? Sure, make it easy for me. I can play the Wii U now. I can put the Wii in the shelf. Well, with the music licensing, only about half of the songs transferred over. The other half couldn't because the Wii U didn't have that license or something like that. And I spoke to Harmonix about it. Harmonix didn't know anything about it. So this is the importance of what we're talking about here, especially with these game stores. Now it opens up, it kind of gives you a brief little bit about, well, here are some game stores that we're going to talk about. And a couple of them I've been to. Pink Gorilla in Seattle, I've been to several times, of course. I live near Seattle. I live close enough anyway. Digital Press. I finally had a chance to check out Digital Press. Actually got the basement tour, thanks to Joe. I never met Joe. I never met Joe, but Joe talks about it in his in this video here. But I got that basement tour, and oh my god, it's mind blowing. It's basically a museum. Come to find out, he actually also has a museum. So isn't that something? But you see Kelsey Lewin in it. She talks about what she's going through as well. Greg Miller, met him briefly at E3 last year, but I see him talking. He's at PAX East in this film. Frank Cifaldi, who I'm a huge personal fan of. He probably doesn't want to think that he has fans, but I'm a fan of his because of what he's doing with video game preservation. That's why I'm a Patreon of his Video Game History Foundation, because I truly believe in what they're doing about taking these games like this, and if it's gone tomorrow, then maybe no one will ever have a chance to experience what I experienced when I played this game in the first place. And that's what he's doing there, and that's what he's talking about. Was like, what happened? Where are they going? Why aren't there? There's things that maybe we'll never see ever again, thanks to just things not being archived properly, things not being saved properly. And it's very, very interesting. He has some great insight. They all have great insight. Pat Contry is on here too. I think he helped out. He was like producing or something like that too. But he talks deeply about that as well, about just the what happens when the games are gone, and then my kids won't be able to experience what I experienced, and maybe the new hot game will be a sequel of a sequel of a sequel of a sequel, 5-10 years down the road. But you want to see the original source. Where did it come from? Like what is this a parody of? What are the original? Like where did it all start? And it may be gone forever, and that's why they're doing this preservation, especially with these game stores too. Some of these game stores, they're struggling. Some of the game stores are a perfect source for people to bring in their old collection. Maybe they're selling their house. They got to get some quick money, whatever the case is, But then they have all these games, and maybe people aren't buying them. Very, very interesting to find out, and interesting to hear everyone's story, because every game store has their own story. They talk about that. They talk a bit about the owners and where they're coming from and everything, how they got into it, and they talk about, interesting enough, where they're what their plans are or anything like that too. And it's so insightful. I never thought about that with running a video game store. Maybe down the line people have said, oh, you know what, I have a collection. I sell games at conventions. I sell games on eBay and Facebook, and maybe I can just sell games at a store. And they talk about what that's like, and where it's going on from there. Plenty of game stores in the U.S. covered in this. Got the one from Seattle, San Diego. I wrote down a few here. Pennsylvania. There's one in Manhattan. Even St. Louis. I've been to St. Louis twice. I didn't know they had a game store. I'm going to check them out next time I'm in the area. Salem, Massachusetts. They talk to him quite extensively as well. They hit up a couple of conventions. They go to PAX East. They go to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, which is where I saw them briefly. But again, I should have introduced myself, dude. I should have introduced myself. But also cool to hear from the indie developers too. When you talk about how important digital is, they go into that too, where it's like, well, to have a physical game like this, well, Nintendo needs to sign off on it and have the seal of approval, which means that somebody had to play it in the first place. And how would that be to you? You put your heart and soul into something, and then Nintendo says, no, we're good. And that's the only option you have. Kemco can't just go to Sega or something like that. They already, that's what they're doing. Imagine all the games that we never played from Nintendo. Imagine all the games that we never saw because of that Nintendo seal of approval. They're just like, no, we're good. And they're just like, okay, delete. There's probably some great games out there. Because I'm telling you, there's got to be great games, because there's a ton of Nintendo seal of approval games that shouldn't have gotten that seal of approval, if you know what I mean. There's a couple of them anyway, right? You probably know a couple of them just off the top of your head, just thinking about it. That's what I love about it too. That's what I love about what's going on. They talk about the digital, the importance of digital that brings common gamers together. They go to PAX East, where they have a bunch of indie developers. Horizon Chase Turbo, covered that game on the channel a couple of times at least, and they couldn't do it without they just have a small team of people. There's no physical available. You can just down. There's a physical now, fortunately, but sometimes if people don't support the digital, there's not going to be a physical. And it takes that note. It's not just Horizon Chase Turbo. They talk about a couple of games in there as well. But that one stood out to me because I was, that was one of the games I was really pushing for. And fortunately, we have a digital instance of it too. They even talk about a couple of holding things for like archiving. Library of Congress is featured. I didn't know they had a video game section of the Library of Congress. That's awesome. I love that, and hopefully they'll expand even more. They say they only have some, but they're working on more. They talk to the Video Game History Foundation. Of course, you talk about Frank. Interesting to see what he's doing and how he's archiving everything, and they're really diving deep into getting every possible thing they can, not just the video games themselves, but also just like the artifacts, the advertisements, the video game magazines. Really super interesting. Joe as well from Digital Press also talking about the National Video Game Museum, which is an actual living physical, as they put it, video game focused museum. I have been to the Strong in Rochester, New York, and that is an amazing museum. It's video games too. It's like toys, Sesame Street. It's other stuff too. They have a video game section, which is fantastic, and I'm all about that. But it's just interesting to hear from everyone. And all of this, as we're already about over 11 minutes into this video here, is all crammed into this awesome, well-produced, well-put-together documentary. And I love documentaries, and I love video games, so you can't go wrong. There's a few video game documentaries out there. There's a few of them. There's, Bits of Yesterday. I was in that one, but that was good. But that kind of followed the Collector. That one kind of followed the Collector. There's other ones like the Video Game Years. There's a ton of course, videos about, the history of video games. It's like, oh, here's what happened. Here's where Intellivision was founded because of Atari with the thing and the migration and all that. I mean, there's a lot of great documentaries out there about video games, and this one is going to be perfect on your shelf, or you can download it digitally. If you would like to, there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe you don't collect DVDs anymore. I got boxes of DVDs. I'll probably never even watch them ever again. I'm keeping the MXC. I'm keeping the Clerks animated series. I'm keeping Captain N. That's about it. The other ones, like the Disney. I have the Disney DVDs, but I have Disney Plus now, and Disney Plus probably ain't going anywhere. But if it is, I got those Disney DVDs as a backup. It's a lot of things to consider, and when it talks about video games too. There's a lot going on, man. I don't know if we barely even scratched the surface on this thing, but we got to save what we can, archive what we can, keep what we can. And these video game stores, I'm telling you, if you happen to be in town, happen to see a store, pop in, say hi, do something, just like have a quick conversation if they're not busy. I'm not telling you to buy a video game from them or anything. I mean, I swear, Pink Gorilla, I think the last game I bought from Pink Gorilla was probably a few years ago. I buy stuffed animals now for my kids. Buy a t-shirt. So many times I buy like the posters and, I buy the trinkets and stuff like that. I have the games. I got the games all I want. But it's cool to see the games all the same. And maybe there is a game that I need, or, maybe there's a part I need, or a piece I need, or a controller or a power cord or something like that. These local video game stores that are popping up, sometimes they close prematurely, but we just got to support what we can. See what we can, find what we can, and it's really, really interesting and great insight with this Not For Sale documentary, which, like I said, is available right now. And again, I kind of went off tangent. It's just, I watched it, and then right before this video, I skimmed a little bit. So I was like, okay, I remember that part. Wrote down my quick notes, and this is where we are in 2020 with video games. We have things in place now. Wish we had these same things in place 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Man, imagine what we could have had now, archived and safe and everything. But just like the old adage, it's like if I could go back in time 10 years, here's all the things I could change. Well, the time is now. Make a change now. That way, 10 years from now, you won't say, man, I should have done that one thing. Well, you can do that thing now. And what that thing is right now is making sure we have an archival or a history of with video games, whether it be print, books, even ROMs and emulation, that's something. Ways to, keep us playing the classic artifacts. I mean, this is fine, and I have my Super Nintendo Classic and all that, and it's hacked, and I have a EverDrive, and it's hacked. But it almost feels better. I mean, it looks the same. It's the same digital binary ones and zeros, whether I'm playing it off of a ROM or if I'm playing it off of this. But it just, I can't explain it. The colors just look better. The controller feels better. It was just like it was meant to be played like this, and that's why it's not meant to be a review. But for me personally, not for sale or not for resale, I think is absolutely worth checking out. So I thank you for watching. I know I've been on, good lord, 15 minutes. By this time, you could have watched it and watched the first 15 minutes of it already. You already would have had everyone else's backstory, and you're already probably right into the them talking about the benefits of digital or something. All the same. Thank you for watching. Looking forward to I'm gonna watch this again. I think I'm gonna watch this again, and hopefully you'll watch it as well. If you want to check it out, check out the links in the description below. You're awesome. Thanks for everything, and hope to see you at a video game convention. There's a lot of video game conventions coming up later on this year. I'm hitting up several of them, and hopefully I'll see you there. And if I do, make sure you swing on by, say hi, and we can talk about Lagoon together. How about that? We'll see you. Thanks.